You, sir, with the glasses and the tie. Oh, but look at you. You're very spiffy.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. The knot's a little fat, but, you know.
Yeah.
I say this with my pubic hair beard. It's a joke.
All right.
You really think I feel good about myself?
So since the legalization and normalization of gay marriage 7 years ago, we've seen decriminalization.
Hold on a second. What was your name, sir?
Jacob.
Jacob. Okay, Jacob. All right.
So we've seen the decriminalization of transmitting HIV, transsexuals become normalized, child drag story hours at public libraries, chemical child castration and efforts to early transition, and pedophiles are rebranding themselves as minor attracted persons and are being welcomed into the LGBTQ community. So my question to you is, with all this happening, what is the threshold for mainstream conservatives to actually stand for Christian conservative principles and not just be progressives that are 5 years behind the curve?
That's a mouthful. No, I certainly agree. If anyone's watched my content, I've taken a lot of flack. You know, the fig shirt, by the way, I think we'll be able to, this is just a fig. I wouldn't know a fig unless it, you know, if you, like I've only ever had them in Newton's. But I will say, you kind of tossed a lot in there. So if we're talking about chemical castration of kids and transition, that's child abuse. Okay, that's wrong. And if we're talking about this idea that men and women are fundamentally interchangeable and you can declare yourself to be whatever sex you want, and by the way, the idea that gender and sex are different, that's a very new idea. Don't let your college professors sell you that. It's a very new idea. It started in the 1950s with French existentialists, again, the cigarette smokers. Oh, maybe I can have a cock. You know? But even back then, they still believed there were only two genders. That's what's crazy. You go back to Simone de Beauvoir, they only believed there were only two genders. Then you had John Money. Are you familiar with John Money? Okay, so are you familiar with the studies that he did?
2 boys and one.
Yeah, he had 2 twins, and he would put one in sexually dominant positions, right? This was taught in school, then we found out both kids ended up killing themselves because he was a sexually abusive, I guess you would say, authority figure. Obviously, that's terrible, and it really took all the way up until, I think Judith Butler, she just came out and had a tussle with Naomi Wolf, which, you know, 2 feminists having an argument, it's just a lesbian chain gang, like, I mean, you know, like you don't want anyone to get hurt, but, you know, it's not quite the Jets and the Sharks, it's just, you know, someone's D-perm gets tussled. I guess D-perms aren't still a thing. Who got a perm in the last few decades? So I think those things are important. Now, and I've spoken against them for a long time. And something else as it relates, though, to gay marriage, because you toss that all in there. And I bet you that here you would probably have some conservatives who don't believe that same-sex marriage should be a thing, and certainly don't believe that it should be a federal thing. And then you probably have some conservatives here who share an opinion that I shared on Dave Rubin's show a very long time ago. This is when our channel was maybe, I don't know, 100,000 or 200,000. And Dave Rubin asked me about same-sex marriage. And he said, well, do you support same-sex marriage? And I said, no. He said, what? And I said, listen, I don't give a rat's ass who you rump range. Like, that doesn't bother me. I don't care. But I don't think that marriage is a fundamental human right. I don't think that anyone has a birthright to get married. When we talk about fundamental human rights, we're talking about what? The right to speak freely, the right to worship freely, the right to protect yourself, your God-given right to self-defense, which is a firearm. Being married to someone, that's a privilege because you have to find a suitor, by the way. And for me, it was hard for a long time. In case you couldn't tell, people weren't beating down my door. All of a sudden, I have a few million subscribers. I'm kind of cute. But he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, here's the thing. This was kind of new. I said, once you declare marriage a fundamental human right, then you infringe on the church because the church can no longer decide that they will not marry 2 men and they can lose their tax-exempt status, or a Christian business. And he said, well, that's kind of crazy. I said, well, trust me, that's what's going to happen because we had Canadian pastors who were jailed. I think someone can fact check me on this. I think the guy's name was Boisson, who was jailed for saying, I'm never going to marry 2 guys in my church. By the way, notice Beto O'Rourke never says mosques. Right? Like, any church who won't marry 2 guys, they should lose their tax-exempt status. And there's every mosque in the country like, we're right here. He's like, I don't want to get blown up, so you guys are fine. Kickflip, whoa! So I think really a lot of those problems are solved by understanding the constitutional parameters of government. I believe anyone should be able to get a civil union that they want, and states can recognize that, and marriage should be in a church. Marriage should be something that the church recognizes, and civil union should be something that the government recognizes. Now, that being said, right, we go into why is marriage recognized by the government, okay? This is just something, a little history lesson. The reason we recognize marriage as a nuclear family, right, mother, father, and child, is because before federal government, before state government, before local government, we understood that the only way you could have a society is if the building block, the fabric of that society, was a nuclear family. Doesn't take a village, it takes a mommy and a daddy. And so that's why I support, of course, the idea of traditional marriage. I think a child does best with a mother and a father in the home. I do not think that a man who identifies as a woman can give everything to a child that a mother can, just like I don't think that two men can give everything to a child that a mother and a father can. But I do recognize that states have the right to recognize civil unions as they want. My problem is when they start infringing on the church. So I think a lot of conservatives probably share that point of view, and I think listen, there are differing point of views. The good news is we don't all have to be like the left, and that we don't all have to follow lockstep and silence people we disagree with. But thank you for your question, sir.
Time.